Hi all, welcome to educators.com. I'm Harish, software engineer. In this session, we will learn about for loop, while loop, and do while loop. So by end of session, you should be able to understand how to use for, while, and do while loop. Loops are used to perform a set of operations on a collection of items. Here in this example, you can check like I have declared an array with 5 elements. So I want to print all these elements. So in order to print all the elements within the array, I need to write console.log 5 times. So instead of writing 5 times, I'll declare a loop which will iterate through each and every element within the array and will print the each element. Like I declared the loop in which I declared a line of code console.log with the number of count, which will iterate through each element. So instead of declaring 5 lines, I can declare within 3 lines. So that's the main advantage of using the loops. And the various loop mechanisms offer different ways to determine the start and end point of the loops. So there are different loops which will determine the different ways to determine uh, the start and end point of the loops. So using loop we can reduce the number of lines of code. So here I'm taking the example of 5 elements, but let's say you have more than 10 elements or 15 elements. Instead of you need to write a log of 15 times. Or let's say you, or apart from the log, you want to perform an operation which consists of nearly more than 5 lines. So let's say 5 into 10 elements called 50 lines. So you need to declare 50 lines of code. Instead of that, you can declare within the 5 lines of code, which will be wrapped within the loop. So that's it. So using these loops, you can reduce the number of lines of code and it will maintain a readability. Let's think. So let's start with for loop. This loop is used when you want to loop through the code for a specific number of times. This means, let's say you want to iterate through a loop for 5 times or 10 times. So specific number of times, instead of 5 or 10 or 15 times number of times, you can use this for loop. So the syntax is here. It will start with the for keyword, and then you need to declare 3 conditions like pre-run code, condition, and the post-run code. And then the braces in which we'll write a bunch of code that will be running through this loop. So pre-run code. This code is executed before the loop starts. Here we can specify the initial value of the counter. This means here before the loop starts, if you want to initialize some variables or if you want to write some execute some kind of code or anything, you can initialize this in the pre-run code. Example here we can check I want to initialize like counter equal to 1 or I equal to 1 or j equal 0, etc. So in this way we can use this pre-run code to initialize some of the variables. Coming to condition, this defines the condition which needs to be satisfied before running the loop. If the condition returns true, the loop will run, or else it will stop. So for each and every loop, it will check this condition. So if this condition is met, then only it will run the next loop, or else it will stop executing the loop. Like here in this example, I mentioned count should be less than 10. If the count value is less than 10, like 5 or 6, it will loop through the code. If the count is equal to 10 or greater than 10, it will stop executing the loop. So this is the main important of this condition. Coming to post-run code, this code is executed after the loop has run. This can be used to increment or decrement the counter. We can also ignore this value. Like post-run code is being used to execute some of the code after the code has run, after the loop has run. So this post-run code is being used like if you want to perform anything or if you want to increment some variables which will be pre-checked before the loop run is like within the condition, you can use this post-run code. So here in this example, I declared 2 variables. One which is of event count with the value of 0 and another is numbers which is an array of 8 elements. So I want to know how many even numbers are there in this array. To check that, I declared a for loop which will start from 0 as array values indexing start from 0. So I initialized a for loop with precondition as 0, and then I am saying the count should be less than numbers dot line. This means My count value should be always less than numbers dot length. This means 8. So it will iterate through the loop from 0 to 7, and then I am incrementing the variable so that I can move from the current position to the next position. So let's see, if numbers of count modulo 2 equal 0, then I'm incrementing the variable as even numbers are divisible by 2. So I'm saying if the number is divisible by 2, let's increment the count, even count, or else not. So this loop will iterate through each and every element within the numbers array, and then if it finds an even number, it will increment the value. So here, after going through each and every loop, I am just printing a console log saying the total number of even numbers with the even count value. So here I have eight numbers. In that 2, 4, 6, 8 are even numbers. So my even count becomes 4. So these are one of the advantages of using the for loop, and this is how we will be using. And one of more important thing which you need to take care is the above three values, which are like initialization, condition, or post run code, are optional. So if you, since this is optional, if you don't use these conditions or initialize in a like pre-run code, it will run in infinite loop as you didn't mention any condition or you didn't mention any post condition or anything. So if there is no condition, it will break out of the loop. So how to break out of the loop? It won't break out of the loop if you, since it turns into infinite loop. So to break out of the loop, you need to use some break statement or label statement. We'll be looking into this in coming slides about break and label statement. So if you don't want to use this three conditions, this is the syntax you need to follow. Like for semicolon, semicolon, and then closing the braces. And here is the code which you want to run within this for loop. Okay. So coming to while loop, this loop will iterate through a bunch of code until the condition evaluates to false. Unlike for loop where we can specify like pre-run code or condition and then post-run code, here while doesn't have anything. It just have a condition where it checks whether if it evaluates true, it will run the code or else it won't. Okay. Like let's say in this example, I declared a variable called n equal to 3. So I want to run a loop till this value becomes or less than value becomes 7. So I'm printing each and every time this n value and then incrementing the n value so that it becomes first it will be printed as 3, then it will increment the value, then it becomes 4, then 5, then 6, and then last 7. So this how the while loop works. So coming to do while. This loop is used when we want to run a bunch of code at least once before the condition is met. This is similar to a while loop, but the difference is it will execute at least once. This means while and do while doesn't have any difference. Here also we have the condition, but the thing is the loop will run at least once. So as in here you can check I declared a do while loop where I declare bunch of code before and then checking the while condition after the code has been executed. This is the reason the code will be executed at least once before the condition is met. So if you want to um, initialize or if you want to run the code at least once before the condition is met so that the condition will be satisfied from the next loop onwards, you can use this do while loop. And one more important, if the condition doesn't evaluate to false, the loop will run into infinite times. So this is the same case in while loop also. Okay. So here let's start with an for loop. Let's flip to brackets IO. Here let's start with the for loop. Let's create a variable called even count with value as 0, and then let's declare an array with numbers as 1, 2, 3. Okay. Let's try to print an even count. Let's mean the number of even numbers within that array. So let's initialize the variable and let's have a condition saying count should be nil less than numbers dot length and then count plus plus. So let's add a condition saying if numbers of count is divisible by 2, increment the count. So let's bring this count. The total number count of even numbers is plus even count. So let's just check this output. So here it says the count as 4. As in this array, it has 4 even numbers and 4 odd numbers. Okay. So let's try to print now the odd numbers. So here it is again as 4. Now let's check with while loop. Let's take the same example. But here it will be a while with the only condition. It's count less than numbers dot length, and then here inside the for loop we increment the count value. Let's declare the count variable with value 0, and then let's increment that count within this while loop. Now let's try to print the odd numbers. Here it says the odd number of odd numbers are 4. Here the difference what we find it is like we declared the condition like initialization before the while loop and then condition within the while loop and then incrementing that variable within the while loop. Whereas in the for loop we declared all in single statement. Now let's check with the do while loop. Let's take the same example. Here instead of having it at first, it will run the code and then we'll be having the condition at last. So let's check the output. Here it says the total count of odd numbers is 5. Let's check what the difference. Oh, here we given a wrong condition saying it should be equal to numbers dot length, but actually since it starts from 0, it should give it as less than only. So here it says the total count of odd numbers is 4. So this is all about the while loop. Sorry, do while loop. That's all from this session. Thank you.